Okay. Let's see. The time is now 5:04 p.m. and we will get started with the Policy and Governance Committee meeting for May 12th, 2026. Thank you everyone for joining us. Ms. Johnson, can you please call the roll?
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Present.
Mr. Briggs,
Present.
Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Brown, Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. So I see Board
Miss,
Member Brown, but maybe she
she
can't.
was trying to talk, and I
Okay.
think maybe there's a challenge with her audio, but she is waving. So is that
Okay.
possible to count her as roll?
Yes, we can
Can
count
you
her.
hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes.
Yes, there
Okay.
we
I have
go.
you accounted
Okay.
Okay.
for. You have three.
Here. Sorry about that.
Perfect. And then, Ms. Johnson, if you could work on bringing Board Member Jackson Saunders over from the waiting room, that would be
Yes,
terrific
I sent
also.
a yeah, I sent a
Okay.
notification for her to accept the promotion to the panel.
Okay. Perfect. So we'll see if she's able to join us. Okay, there are 3 board members present. With a quorum present, the Policy and Governance Committee meeting will come to order. Good evening and welcome to the May 12th, 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. I am Amy Olivo, Vice Chair and District 4 Board Member. It brings me great pleasure to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. For those unable to observe now, the meeting is being recorded and can be accessed on the PGCPS YouTube channel for later viewing. I'd like to inform the public that agenda item number 7.1-0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity, will be discussed immediately after agenda item 5.0, public comments, to accommodate our wonderful guests this evening. If there are no objections, the committee will adopt the May 12th, 2026 meeting agenda as amended. There being no objections, the May 12th, 2026 meeting agenda is adopted as amended. If there are no corrections, the March 24th, 2026 committee meeting minutes shall be approved as distributed. There being no corrections, the minutes are approved. There are no public speakers this evening, and so we will move right into agenda item 7.1, Policy 0116, Wellness, Nutrition, and Physical Activity. At this time, we will consider this agenda item, and I recognize Mrs. Welsh to present her guest speakers and to provide an update on Policy 0116, Wellness, Nutrition, and Physical Activity. Thank you, Ms. Welsh.
Good evening. So this evening, the policy, this policy, wellness, 0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity went through a significant revision back in October of 2024. And in that revision, there was language the question came up, is there a possibility that there can be recess at the middle schools? And of course, there are so many demands in terms of curriculum and what needs to be done time-wise. It was really determined that was not a possibility. However, the committee at that point felt strongly that they needed to know more about what are ways that we can get physical activity for middle school students. So a language was put into the policy that said this policy would come back and we would look at it. And a study group made up of middle school instructional directors, principals, assistant principals, a representative from school services, representatives from academic division addressing physical education, health education, as well as other content areas as appropriate. Community members, representatives from local university colleges will meet and review and analyze evidence-based research regarding the impact of physical activity on academic achievement and social and emotional wellness of middle school students, the possibility of incorporating incorporating recess into the middle school students' school day, effective ways of incorporating physical activity or breaks into the middle school students' school day, and implementation of physically active lessons in middle school classes. So this evening, we have with us numerous people and quite a wide variety in several different divisions and departments across our Prince George's County Public Schools that are here to share the research that they did and what they came up with and what their recommendations are. So what I will do is I'm going to introduce Amy Wiley first, who is our supervisor of physical education, and ask her then to please, and she can introduce herself, but then introduce all the other people or point to them and they can introduce themselves. Because we are very fortunate, and we also have two middle school principals in addition to instructional and student services staff and health services. So Amy, if you would like to do the introductions.
Thank you, Mrs. Welsh. I'm Amy Wiley. I am the instructional supervisor for physical education, and I'm going to let my colleagues come off mute and introduce themselves. So, Dr. Doncor.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Nana Doncor. I supervise health education here in Prince George's County Public Schools.
Thank you. Mr. Nance.
I'm Kenneth Nance, proud principal, Buck Lodge Middle School.
Thank you. Dr. Jones.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Tracy Jones. I'm the supervisor for the Office of School Health.
Thank you. Mr. Clement.
Hello, everybody. Marcellus Clement here, proud principal of Greenbelt Middle School.
Did Dr. Frazier jump off?
Dr. Tammy Frazier. I'm the
there you
Wellness
are.
Program Coordinator for Prince George's County Public Schools.
Thank you. I could not see you in my screen there. So sorry. So that is our committee.
So I don't need to talk anymore because you all are the experts since you did the research. So I'll let you move forward with your presentation.
Thank you. And Ms. Johnson, will you be able to bring the presentation up? Okay, so first of all, I want to thank you all for having us and for the individuals that assisted with this task. And I forgot to send the updated version, but we were originally presenting on the 14th of April, and today is May 12th. So we got together and got information around middle school physical activity or recess. And we are presenting Moving Towards Success, the case for physical activity in middle school, boosting academic performance and emotional wellness. These are the committee members. Some of them are not on today. So there are a few more people that assisted us with information. And the why we're here is because of the board policy 0116. And this is the reason for the work that we do around physical activity and other areas for the school system. A section of the policy clearly called for a study group, and that's what we have done, is put this group together. So the science of the active brain. So there's a neural connection. Physical activity triggers that Miracle-Gro for neurons in your brain. It also helps with executive function, which many of us may have that issue. So even just 20 minutes during the school day helps with working memory, mental flexibility, and attention. The emotional shield, which I know we're all focused on social emotional learning and the wellness for our students. And the evidence-based research actually proved that there is adolescent anxiety and depression reduction by 7 to 8%. So recess. When we looked at the research, by the way, a lot of it talked about how middle school students don't want us to call it recess, and they think that's for elementary kids. So there was a lot of conversation around blacktop breaks or fresh air breaks, calling it something different so they don't think about it being recess. So so many things happen during recess. The unstructured growth of their social skills, they become leaders when they're able to, interact with each other, and there's no teacher or someone overseeing that right over top of them, and lots to do with working on conflict resolution. It also gives them a focus reset. So it helps on task behavior. I'm not sure how many of you get up and take a walk or a stretch break, but it definitely helps when you have physical activity throughout the day to reset your brain for focusing and helping with on-task behavior. So the middle school myth, as I mentioned, the kids don't want us to call it recess. We just have to think of ways to make it something different. And a lot of times that physical activity or recess time it's cut because of instructional time. We need to make sure that students are in those classes learning, and you can't push everything into that school day. So the recess to instruction ratio actually increases classroom productivity. So physically active learning. So when we looked at it, which I've been in the system for a while, we had a program at the elementary level called Take 10, where we wanted students to have activity in the actual learning of the classroom that they're sitting in during the day. So Take 10, they did 10 minutes, maybe split it up into 5, where they actually had movement embedded into their learning. So they could move during a gallery walk or act out concepts in any content area, actually. And then the 6% advantage, I wrote it down and one moment. I was going to tell you what PAA stands for. It's physically active. Oh, sorry, guys. So I will look it up as we go on. But the study found schools using active lessons had a 6% gain in standardized test scores. And I want you to know lots of this information is from 20 or 30 years ago. So we've known this for a very long time, that movement is where it's at. And we like to call it a brain boost in health and physical education when we're presenting, not a brain break, because your brain is not on a break. It actually energizes your brain. And if we did 1 to 5 minutes, in a classroom every so often, it would help with the tiredness, the brain tiredness, not that the brain needs a break. Next slide, sorry. So I would like some of Mr. Clement and Mr. Nance, if you could just come off of mute one at a time and talk about what you think school level wise. So we looked at, low barrier, high impact. So it doesn't have to be a 20 or 30-minute period for them to have recess or a break. It can be short snippets. So I'm not sure if you all, through our conversations, thought of things that you could do in your middle schools.
Yes, I can go first. Once again, hello, everybody. Marcellus Clement from Greenbow Middle School. I'm going to take it back to being a former physical educator myself. It was actually, I learned this through my student teaching method. It was not in this county, it was in a different county, where lunch was connected with recess. And of course, we have to make sure our students get their food and get a chance to eat in a certain amount of time. But what the structure was, it was 15 to 20 minutes of eating time. And then after that time, what happened was the principal or whoever was the supervisor on lunch duty had an access way where certain staff members would go outside with the select students that want to participate, and they had 10 minutes of recess and then came back in after about 10 minutes just to make sure that brain break or endorphin release was allowed for those students to proceed with the rest of the day in the afternoon. I think that is something that at my school I can try to incorporate, but of course you have to have the logistics of staffing to be appropriate in those places and have an access point where if you leave the cafeteria, it's short to either a gymnasium or outside fields that can provide that opportunity. I know myself personally, when we see our students get a chance just to have that physical activity, it does calm some of our students down when it deals with the middle school student because they can be very anxious and hyper about a lot of things. But just that physical activity can help, just proceed with that. And it was something that worked very well when I did my student teaching at this particular school. Everybody bought in with it, and it seemed like it did bring a great morale for the students as they proceeded throughout the day. But I'll have Mr. Nance, support on his side of what he thinks is good as well.
Yeah, thank you, Principal Clement. And then Amy, that acronym was physically active across the curriculum. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure they were aware of that.
Thank you. I knew it was something simple and I was forgetting it.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice with my students is when they have physical activities, like today we did a post MCAP incentive and we had, it was differentiated. We had the kids, we had something going on in the gym and something going on in the back of the building. And the staff unsolicited, told me that the kids were more engaged in the classes. Basically, what we did is we had a rotation where some kids were in class, other kids were in the gym, other kids were outside doing carnival activities. And when they came back from the carnival activity, they were more focused and engaged. And I've noticed over the years when we do dances, when we have any type of physical activity, we have vendors that come in, Corey, the dribbler, he's dribbling with the kids, or some type of physical activity. Not only are the kids more focused, but their relationship with adults is actually better versus not having those opportunities. So I would add that everything Principal Clements said, but I would add that as well.
Thank you both for your expertise as former physical educators and current principals in Prince George's County. I think you both know best middle school because that's where you've been. So I appreciate it. I think that is the second to last slide. Yep. So here's an example. You know, we provided some samples, and that link actually goes to more Brain Boost activities. And in my presenting to different schools, classroom teachers, a lot of times they just want to know what to do. They want someone to give them a list, or provide those activities and make it simple for them. So there are tons of Brain Boost activities and also curriculum embedded movement activities that we can share with staff in Prince George's County. So here are some of our recommendations. Dr. Jones or Dr. Frazier, I don't know if you wanted to share anything from the health services or student services perspective.
I just want to add that also after eating, if you do some form of walking around, it also helps with the digestion of the food. So it's not just sitting there. We oftentimes we get itis after we eat. So by doing some type of activity after lunch, that also helps. And Dr. Tammy, you want to add anything?
Absolutely. For our schools that are recognized as one of America's healthiest schools, we've had to submit to our application a different type of physical activities that are involved right now in the buildings. And so I know some schools have implemented the walking and learning aspect when they go outside and they're performing science projects, or they're listening to instruction using AirPods or earbuds, that they're actually listening to a story that's going to engage them in their reading classes or their literacy classes. So when they return back to the classroom, they're prepared for the classwork, but they've already walked around the campus or walked in the hallway to listen to the story to then address it. And so there are different activities that are already taking place that we've already implemented. And so to do this across the board and making a recommendation so that every school has to implement, every middle school, this would be awesome and even better for the students.
Thank you both so much. And Dr. Doncor, anything you'd like to add?
No, I just concur with everyone. I was thinking about what Dr. Jones mentioned about movement after lunch to aid with digestion. So I thank her for highlighting that.
Thank you. And as I was working through this with everyone, I happened to be walking at Watkins Park, and there on the walking paths, they have QR codes that you can scan, and it takes you to different activities. So I wasn't sure if that's something, a school could do where you put up a QR code, I don't know, in the hallway or in a classroom. So it's something simple. The kids, I know we're probably all worried about the phones in their hand, but if they happen to have it, we can use it to incorporate movement into their day. As well as someone else had talked about schools that have walking paths around the building, not just for staff, but their students as well. And as a mom of 2 students in Prince George's County, I can tell you my kids love Just Dance and Wii Sports, and they are both teenagers in high school. So there are just simple ways that we can incorporate movement and engage students and make it fun, as well as convince them that they're not learning, they're just being active, although they're learning at the same time. Okay. And I believe the next slide is the bibliography. And I wanted to point out a couple things on here. So a lot of the research came from, so here are the highlights: the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, American Academy of Pediatrics, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, NIH. There's the International Journal of Physical Activity and Health, Preventive Medicine, Journal of School Health, Applied Psychology, Nutrition and Metabolism. So the research has definitely been there. It's been there for a while. And I, as an employee and a parent, would love to see us incorporate movement in all levels. I'm not sure if any other committee members had anything they wanted to add before we close out, but I want to thank you for your time. And the committee, thank you all for making it happen.
Thank you so much, everyone. Ms. Welch, sorry I jumped in. Did you have any closing remarks on this before we move to board member questions or comments?
No, I think it's, we can answer all the questions. That would be helpful.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much for all of this information. As a PGCPS parent myself as well, this aligns with what I know and see from my kids and have seen over the years. Board members, please raise your hand if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share. Let's see. Board member Briggs, please.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for the presentation. It was not only thoughtful and helpful information, but I think it definitely deeply resonated with me as a former teacher. I guess one of the questions I have is, and I think that there's a lot of research out there around play-based learning, around project-based learning, which I feel like might be somewhat analogous, right? Students getting up, walking around, being creative to some extent. But I was curious about like the teachers and the staff that may not have the flexibility. Let's say it's inclement weather and you can't go outside, or the gym, you had a lot of kids in the gym area, right? Are there alternatives that you found in the research that could get to it? For example, natural lighting. I know in the wintertime, I'll sometimes have like a light that I put up that kind of mimics the sun a bit. Are there things that can happen in the event that we can't? And then I guess also the other piece was around students who may be neurodivergent or students that have disabilities. The policy is broad, but I also don't want to put that expectation on schools if they can't actually meet it. So can you just speak to any of the things that you think should be in the policy to kind of be sensitive to what teachers and school leaders are faced with, as well as other kind of unintended outcomes like inclement weather?
I would love to hear from the principals. I don't want to be just the talker here.
No problem. I'll say one thing. If it's a school-wide juncture that we could do as a whole, for example, let's say after we come back from lunch, let's make it a mandate. Let's have a 2-minute stretch break or things of that nature that classroom teachers can incorporate. That's a whole school-wide juncture of what we're trying to do, not only with physical health, but that also helps with classroom management as well. So speaking to that and just having a belief in it, and us as building leaders like myself or Principal Nance or whoever's a leader inside the building, if you have that vision that can set and give the purpose and research and reasoning behind it, you will have the staff that will follow through. And I think it also, me and Principal Nance talked about this all the time, just the culture of what we do in our buildings, understanding the importance of why we're doing this, it could speak volumes of how we can lead in that way. So just in case it's inclement weather or things of that nature, everybody, regardless if they're a physical educator or not, they can learn some type of activities that we can do just for 1 to 2 minutes to reset back in class.
Principal Nance, did you want to add anything?
I just saw the time running down. I didn't want to mess that up, but
You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, I echo the same thing. I think Principal Clements said it earlier. It's just that adult. It's not even just the staff, just the adult buy-in, and I think that would be the biggest barrier to anything that you do in a school is just the buy-in of the staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other positive part is if the staff is moving too, they also are getting that benefit. So it's a twofer.
I don't want to go over. I know Vice Chair Olivo. I'm not sure if I have just like 30 seconds.
Sure, go
Was
ahead. Yep, and then we'll move to Board Member Brown.
just the last piece was just around like how you all as principals are thinking about implementing this for teachers and staff. What would that look like as far as professional developments or ways to get them active too?
Well, one of the things we do at Buck Lodge, we're a large school, so a lot of times we have to do things virtually. But when we bring folks together, we never sit and get. It's always a gallery walk. They're getting the professional development. They're working in groups to do sorting, and we try to do a lot of modeling. So there's a lot of if they take breaks, they normally that breaks are pretty much incorporated in anything we do as far as professional development.
And just to add to that, what we do to incorporate staff is we promote this like as an emolument opportunity where we do like a walking club or things of that nature where we use the bottom parts of our building. We're a larger school, just like Buck Lodge. They'll use the bottom part of our building just to have a walking club to encourage that type of movement within the staff. Even if you never worked out before, this is something to just have that engagement where that can add to the buy-in where if we can do this, let's find a way to do this for our students too in the classroom.
And may I also say from a central office staff perspective, we do, we'll start with a walk and then as we go along, we'll, stop in people's offices and say, hey, would you like to join us? Or we'll schedule it at a certain time so that people can put it on their schedules and join. It's all about just getting up and moving, even if it's walking up and down the hallway. Sometimes it's inclement weather, so we'll walk in the hallways, up the steps, and then back down, or we'll go into our auditorium and we'll just walk around the auditorium. Sometimes we'll play music and we'll walk to the beat of the music. Again, it's just about moving and getting that movement in.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone. Board Member Brown, please go ahead with your questions or comments.
Yes, Board Member Briggs already asked one of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Great. Well, I had a comment as well. So I will share that whenever I have the opportunity to speak at career days, which primarily has been elementary school and middle school, and I talk about the role of the board and policies and what policies affect our students, recess or some sort of break always comes up. It's incredible. So especially if I'm talking to a 5th grade class and they're just they can't believe they've been informed clearly by someone that starting next year in middle school they won't have recess and they just can't believe it. And so I've had many career days where the students implore me to please make sure we have recess or some sort of brain break in middle school. So this just aligns with what I am hearing, and I'm sure what you all are hearing from our students. And I think like Board Member Briggs, part of my question, and it has really been answered, I'd say pretty well, is I know that we have so much to pack into our school days. And especially at this time of year, it just feels like there aren't enough, minutes in the day to get everything in that we need to. And so what I was really appreciate is these little kind of 2 to 3, 5 to 10 minute ideas. And partially what I'm wondering, and I'd really appreciate you all's thoughts on is, I know we push a lot of information as well to our teachers, right? What would you recommend as the best way to share this list of ideas or ways for them to easily incorporate this into their classrooms or right after lunch? Like how do we best share these ideas with our teachers so that it just doesn't become like yet another task on their really long list of everything that they have to handle that day?
Yep. So the neat part about Nana and I is we have a teacher in every building. So we do professional development with our teachers and could have them share. I have also presented at Principal Nance's school, so we could actually provide a presentation and share the information and model it if the principals would ask us and we're able.
Okay.
And
And
As well.
about 23% of our schools are have school-based wellness teams. And so it's not just the teachers alone, it's administrators, it even could include a student on that wellness team, and they can help encourage and get the buy-in of the staff and students.
And usually folks buy in when they're fed or they see the benefit. And so we're not feeding them, but they'll see the benefit if they have the research behind it.
And I would just add to, I think Principal Nance is both, like I am, a Title I and a community school. So what we use is we use those vendors to help promote not just activities for our students, but our staff too. So whatever, physical opportunity, like right now in the flag football league that our school has joined, or different community organizations, I want to promote this as a mentoring, and that is part of their mentoring thing, like higher achievement, which they include recess within their planning for academics after school. So we use those organizations to try to promote some physical activity that the staff can be accompanied with it too. Like even Community Youth Advance does yoga as one of their activities they do after school. So using those funds to try to bring that to our school as well.
Great, thank you. That's super helpful. I have a second question, but I wanted to see if any of our board members had a round 2 of questions before I ask mine. Okay, I'll go ahead, and then if you think of any other questions, feel free to raise your hand. Ms. Frazier, you mentioned the school-based wellness teams, 23% of our schools. What advice or recommendations do you have to increase that number so we can get more school-based wellness teams at our schools? Because I think you're right, that could be a key piece of all of this.
So let me just preface this with, last year we only had about 18% of the schools, I think it was about 18%, that were participating, and my numbers doubled this school year. So I'm super excited about that. What's happening now is, like, I've partnered with Amy, I've partnered with Nana, I've partnered with Psych Services. I'm going to be hosting different training sessions for their staff. So when we get into the building, they're all heard the same thing. They're all aware of the school-based wellness team. They're all aware of the expectations. And so I expect an increase in the number of schools that participate and have school-based wellness teams. And then I'm going to be a little more hands-on this fall by helping them develop, to get their ideas, working with physical activity, if this is what we're going to move towards, and see what we can do to increase the participation and the following of the board policy, which requires a school-based wellness team. So,
And I also
Right.
think Dr. Tammy is being a little on the shy side. We actually had 13 schools that were classified as America's Healthiest Schools this year, whereas last year we had 3. And so she has been astronomically, as it relates to that. She also received a grant from Kaiser to help the process, a $20,000 grant. And then also one of the things that we're going to work with our school-based health centers is as they come in and they get their physicals and they have appointments with our nurse practitioner at the school-based health centers, that they also talk about the importance of the physical activity and moving and, those types of things.
Terrific. Thank you. I love Dr. Jones that you are like, hey, wait a minute. She has not shared her kudos enough. So thank you for sharing all that. Mrs. Walsh.
Can I ask just a couple questions, please? So
Please,
my
yeah.
first question is that what specifically does the school-based wellness teams do? Are they looking at health things related to only students or staff and students, or can you just give me just a little bit in terms of what they do?
So they're actually working with students, staff, and the community. It could be something related to immunization compliance. It can
Oh,
be
okay.
food insecurity. It could include health education and tobacco education. It was interesting that this year I found that elementary schools thought they weren't teaching tobacco education until we dug a little deep into the health class and said, oh yeah, you just haven't taught it yet. It's coming up in March, right? So there's certain topic areas that they have to hit, right? And so the team will develop a goal for their school at the beginning of the school year based on a survey they complete. It'll help them develop or choose what their goal would be for that year. One or two, it doesn't have to be a lot. But it could be improving attendance. And why isn't the student coming to school? Oh, is it because our immunization rate is high? So if we bring the mobile clinic, or if this was a school that has a school-based health center, we can have an impact on attendance almost immediately. So it really just depends on what the need is for that school.
And
So could
also,
you,
wait a minute, before you go on, Robin, there's a health and wellness policy that is mandated by FDA, and part of that is making sure that schools are adhering to that wellness policy. So that is also a part of what the school-based wellness people do, making sure that the school is following the district's policy on that.
so thank you, because that's sort of what if it was going to be my next question. Do you see these teams being able to assist if, in fact, the committee decides that they'd like to put some language into the AP, to the policy that says specifically about having movement breaks or whatever, but something to do with movement for students? You see these teams as being very supportive and moving that forward in the middle schools?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a wellness champion that will work directly with the wellness council, right? And so once we share with the wellness champion what we would like to do, what agenda we would like to push for the school year, then they would take it back to the wellness teams, and then they will reach out for assistance if they need some more guidance to get the team on board.
So then my second question is, and so when policy is written, it's written for what it's a tool of governance for the school board, and it's for them saying to the school system, this is what we'd like to see happen. And so if the committee determines that that's what they'd like to see, it's always though important to understand what are the the constraints that schools are having to deal with. What are all the factors? Because you don't want to throw something in on a school that then is like screaming, help, help, because we can't do all this. This is too much you put on our plate. So my next question would be, if you're thinking in terms of like time, or like what is available in terms of a middle school day that opens up that opportunity, that would be considered reasonable, and people wouldn't be feeling, wouldn't want them getting stressed out just trying to put that into the day, because the whole idea is to de-stress. So
I'm sitting at a middle school right now, daily, and what I've noticed is they have a virtual morning announcements. The teacher has to sign on to Zoom. So now everybody can see what's going on. Everybody can participate at the same time. And I think it'll be easier to get everybody to do it at the same time, as opposed to different staggering the time of day for movement, right? And so if there was that 5-minute break, that 5-minute time slot, that 10-minute time, no, okay, 10 minutes is too long, 5 minutes, maybe 2 5-minute breaks in a day, to incorporate some activity school-wide, it will just become second nature. It would be an expectation, and it's not something that the teacher has to do, in their classroom alone, when everybody is doing it. And so for those that can do it virtually via Zoom, via the smart boards or TVs, I think that would be probably the most efficient way to get this done.
Can I
And
add
I
to?
also think it could be something simple, like you could have a line dance, at the beginning of the class, and they can just get up and they can line dance like right there. It's all about movement and being creative kids like to dance. I don't know, Mr. Nance and Mr. Clemens may not like that idea, but it's still moving.
And I would also add, and most middle schools have an advisory block, and that would be a good time to incorporate some structured movement. It could be incorporated in the schedule, and it wouldn't impact any other content area, including creative arts.
Oh, that's helpful. Okay.
Ms. Welsh, does that finish up your questions?
Yes, it does.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Board Member Briggs, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think Miss Welsh was really actually going down the path that I was thinking, which is that so I'm saying this as a person who had, the ability to work for the Office of the Surgeon General, the Department of Health and Human Services, and I know that public health messaging is not, it's like drinking from a fire hose, right? You can say all the things, but people want to know things like an apple a day keeps the doctor away, right? Or drinking, 8 cups of water is a good thing. And I'm just curious, like, what are the highest leverage things that if we're thinking about what school, teachers who are like, I want to do something, this data is saying this thing, but I really just don't know what to do, right? Line dancing isn't going to be realistic for me in this moment, or maybe it is. But like, what are some of the highest leverage things from the research? And I just wanted to say that I wonder if maybe there's an additional piece with the committee around kind of having some of those things. If we really want to see, an impact in outcomes academically, but also just students' overall happiness, then what are some of those things that we can pull from the research that can say, if you do this thing, then at least, right, just get students to walk around to the water fountain or whatever it may be, would be helpful. So I just want to add that additional piece to what Mrs. Walsh was asking, because I feel like our policy is like drinking from a fire hose. You need to do these things, but then it's like, it's practical when you actually have like 5 things that are reduced down for schools to say, we can do these things, or we can do something else creatively to try to meet this expectation and requirement.
So I think that's something we could work on. I'm not sure from the principal point of view what would actually work. I don't know if we can pinpoint 5 things right now or like the top 3. I can tell you as a mom of a 9th grader, I know we shy away from social media, but the whole TikTok dance thing, I know Nance and Clement are probably seeing it, before school, after school. But I think dance is a big one, especially at the middle school level where we can get them moving just in the moment. It doesn't have to be something vigorous at the time, but something short and sweet.
If I can add, one of the things that we're speaking strong in our school is the Maryland Report Card, which I know we're all evaluated from different schools. And one of the things that when we talk about just the physical activity and being, having that social awareness or that mental health support for our students, it will reduce our suspension because the impulsivity will be reduced down because they got a chance to release for those activity moments or those structured times. And if we're having our suspension rates go down, that gives more chance for our students to be successful in school, which will lead to higher test scores. So I think it'll be a correlating thing that will go on that we would show through time, like Amy said, but just making sure we're being consistent with it. That's going to be the thing we have to do.
And to add to that real quick, so kids at my school don't have access to their phones during the day, which is a plus for us. We've seen a huge decrease in conflict amongst staff and students, and conflict amongst students and staff. But one of the things that I try to emphasize to my staff as it relates to this is when we're talking about their rating, when they're getting rated for FFT, basically the highest distinguished has everything to do with children, and the adult is the facilitator and the child is basically controlling the learning, which could absolutely incorporate movement in that with the child. So I always kind of bring it to that point. So there's a benefit for the teacher.
Mr. Nance, I am excited to hear that you guys decided to have no phone access.
Thank you so much for all those comments.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Let me just take a second to see if anyone else has any comments. Ms. Welsh, is there anything else that you feel like you need right now as part of this? Oh, you're on mute.
I am curious to hear the committee's thoughts on this in terms of what they'd like to see in the policy. I think all of this information has been extremely helpful. And also understanding a little bit better what the parameters are within the middle school day is extremely helpful also.
Yeah, thank you. Board members, do you have any comments right now? This can also be something that we think about a little bit based on everything that we learned today from the presentations and bring those comments back at a later date. But as of right now, do you have anything that we would like to move forward with potentially incorporating into this policy? Board member Briggs.
No, I just want to say thank you for all of the research. I think it was like really helpful, and I think more time to think about it would be good because there's a lot in here. But I just don't want it to be to the points that Minnie made, like too much for teachers or too much for school leaders to take on. But as long as you all think from your expert opinion, like a lot of this makes sense in the day to day, then I trust that, and I think this is great.
May I add a comment?
Please, yes.
Thank you. So, not that we want movement, physical activity to be competitive, but I know these middle school principals here have some healthy competition around some of their athletic teams. So I was wondering, the system is using the Bloom app right now, where we're walking for wellness or steps for our wellness. So I was wondering if maybe there's something we could do to get more movement going, maybe area wide or make the kid, help the kids get involved in it so they can come up with something where it's a competition, but not really a competition for them to get moving. Because I know middle school, they, like I said, I had a middle schooler a few years ago, and that competition during athletic seasons is amazing.
So that's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that's an excellent idea because everyone like at SASA right now is walking. And it's all because of this Bloom app, because and it's not that we're super competitive, but it's the idea. So I could see that being an excellent way of just really looking at the whole activity in a completely different way, not like, oh, there's another requirement, but more of, yeah, we want to do this because look at our school and what we've been doing. What I think is, I do think that would be extremely helpful, but so what I'm thinking is that the language that working on the language for the policy would be a more global approach, but I too need opportunity to think about everything and probably re-listen to this whole part of the session just because that'll be helpful for me to incorporate it. And then the administrative procedure could actually then go into much more detail about specifics as far as all the possible options that could be available or considerations as middle schools plan and move forward with this.
I'm not a communications person, but the senior signing day is a big thing. So maybe if we had like a middle schoolers are moving and we could use the communications piece where it's more of a broader, here's what we're doing in middle school, and communications could tie into that and showcase the movement happening. I think that would be neat as well.
Thank you, Ms. Wiley. I love that idea as well. My brain's spinning also of like movement minutes, like schools could somehow track them, and we have a grand prize for our middle school movement minutes, or something along those lines. And so if a teacher has a class of 25 students and everybody's doing a 2-minute brain boost break in that class, that's 50 minutes of movement minutes that they can track that day. I think we could get up into like 1 million, movement minutes, right? Times the number of students, and if something happens every day. And at the same time, as Mr. Briggs has said, I think we need to be a little careful at the board policy level of how we are really encouraging this, but not, necessarily like forcing a principal to participate in this in a specific way, but allowing that school-based culture to also kind of lead the way and how each school does it. So I think I know from my perspective, what I'd like to do is think about this a little bit more. And I know Miss Welsh's mind is going as well. But I think what you're pretty safe to come away from this is that the members of this committee are in strong agreement and deeply appreciate all of the research and information that you have shared about the importance of these movement breaks and in making sure that, whether it's called recess or called, brain boost time or movement minutes or whatever we call it, that this continues into middle school. And that's certainly what I hear from fifth graders and middle school students at this career day. This is the policy that they want me to look at. So I really am grateful for this discussion. Okay, so I'm going to move to, and I just also want to let you know we're gonna take a quick vote on moving this policy forward. And I welcome you all are more than welcome to stay for the rest of our business meeting, but also you are more than welcome to jump off because I know several of you are still at your office and it's been a long day. So we really appreciate you being here. So the question is, shall the committee recommend policy 0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity to the policy's sponsor for revision approval? Any discussion? I know we've pretty much had our discussion. Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call vote.
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Yes?
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Policy 0116, wellness, nutrition, and physical activity will be recommended to the policy sponsor for revision approval. Thank you again, everyone, for this robust discussion. We'll next move to agenda item 6.0, legislative update. And I again recognize Mrs. Welsh for our legislative updates.
So basically, right now the governor is signing bills. So and he has signed numerous bills, but the specific education bills, it's been announced that he will be signing them on May 25th. So right now things are fairly quiet as they move forward for him to sign. I suspect that he'll probably sign most of the bills. I don't know he'll veto any of them. But of course we don't want to count our our eggs before they're hatched. Just because I wouldn't want to do that. But in the meantime, though, I have been working myself on. I'm almost done. I'm putting every bill that at least has made it to the governor on a chart for our chiefs and the other departments as far as what their responsibilities will be in implementing the law. And it's quite interesting because when you get down into the nitty gritty of some of these bills, they're a little scary for some of the things that we will be required to do. So that my goal is actually to have that completed by next week, even though the 25th is until the following week. But I know that a lot of people are anxious for if there's things. So many of the bills, although I did notice that there's more bills this year that say they will go into effect in October than in the past. But there's still a lot of bills that still say July 1, 2026, which is very difficult sometimes to implement for that quick of a turnaround. But the sooner I can get it into their hands, the better it is. But on the other hand, I certainly don't want them to start working on something and they turns around and the governor never signed it. But we'll have that all ready for them so that once he's going through all the bills there, we'll be ready to go to start implementing certain bills. So I think that's basically it for the legislative update right now.
Thank you, Mrs. Welch, and thank you for all that hard work ensuring that our staff is aware of all the statute and law changes that will be coming down the pike from this year's legislative session. So we'll move to 7.0, proposed policies. There are 6 additional agenda items for discussion this evening. Each item will include 2 rounds of discussion with 2.5 minutes allotted per round. If a third round is needed, we can take a vote on whether to proceed with that. So we'll be looking at 7.2, the rules of procedure. And I would like to recognize Mrs. Welsh again to provide the update to the board rules of procedure.
So, just to give a little history, about a year or 2 years ago, the parliamentarian said that we needed to get rid of some of our bylaws, and he ended up putting together these rules of procedures and procedure. And so that sort of picked up many of the things that occur in a board meeting and what the steps were and what you need to do by law. So, as I went through these different, several more bylaws, and some are just actually policies, but they're only like one-liners or tiny little pieces of information, not very much. It dawned on me that it's sort of a little screwy to have this stuff sort of randomly showing up over here and here and here, when these are the things that actually are being addressed in a board meeting. And discussing it also with Miss Adeline, in terms of putting it into the rules of procedure. So if you look at the agenda for tonight, it talks about a cost estimate for board resolutions, certificate of recognition, opening of meeting with prayer, and proclamations that being rescinded. The only reason they're going to be rescinded is because they're actually being placed into the rules of procedure. So with that, if you could bring up the rules of procedure, Ms. Johnson, we can look at those quickly to see the changes that were made.
It looks, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Tia, you jumped off my screen for a second. So I didn't think you were there, but now I see you again. Sorry.
So if you scroll down to the consent, actually to the call to order. Go back up. Hold on, go back up to the right there. So as far as the board prayer, if you looked at the current policy or bylaw, it actually has, let me see what that number is. It actually has the as a policy. It just, all it says is you're going to pray, and this is the prayer. So what I did was I put it in under your where you have the opening ceremony piece, and then it says board prayer, and then your next thing is Pledge of Allegiance. So I added both of those, but with board prayer, I then have in parentheses Appendix 3. And if you go to the very end of the procedures where there are the appendixes, the Appendix 3 is actually the board's prayer, of which then the board would use that prayer for the prayer. So it sort of takes care of that piece. Then the second piece under the consent agenda items, it says the consent agenda items right there. Okay, the consent agenda items may include but are not limited to. And then we have the proclamations, which the board may issue proclamations to recognize, honor, commemorate, or endorse individuals, groups, institutions, movements, anniversaries, or other events, which is basically again from the bylaw or policy. And then the next one's resolutions. And the big piece about resolutions is that they are all recommendations presented by the superintendent will, when feasible, include cost estimates. So if you're bringing a resolution which is going to actually be something that will cost the system money, then, and this is actually currently in that policy, then you have to identify the source of funding, the startup costs, the continuing costs, the budgetary impact and justification for the expenditures, which if you look at board action summaries, that's exactly what they lay out for each of the things that are in a resolution. So that is for that policy. And then the next one, I did include this is unrelated to anything out there that's currently in policy or procedure per se, but I went through agendas, many different board agendas, just seeing what all the things that came up under the consent agenda. And also what came up were contract awards and recommendations. So I included the contract awards and recommendations for contract awards presented and recommended by the superintendent. Oh, excuse me, that was supposed to be a dash. For contract awards presented and recommended by the superintendent, which shall include description of the services of items, costs, source of funding, budget implications, justifications, describing how the service or item is being contracted addresses how it addresses PG needs and other required information in accordance with then your policy, which is the purchasing policy 3323. So if you look at what's required on that policy, I mean, it's pretty clear about the different things. Like even if they end up having to do a sole source, or they hop on another contract from another county or something, they're supposed to provide that justification. So those would be things that would be part of the conversation under contracts when it came up under the consent agenda. And then another item that often shows up under the consent agenda is your budget transfers within the operating and capital accounts. And again, and that one is in accordance with policy 3160, transfer of funds, which then lays out very specifically the steps for that. So, and I did at the very top, I said consent agenda items may include, but are not limited to, because I didn't want to limit the board so that they can only do those items, because there might be something that comes up that is really appropriate to be under the consent agenda. And so I added that. So I think that covers each of those, policies that were there as singletons and can be incorporated into this rules of procedures. And that way it's all together in one place versus sort of piecemealed across the sections. So that's it.
Terrific. Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute. Thank you so much. Board members, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. The question is, shall the committee recommend the board rules of procedure to the policy's sponsor for revision approval? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Johnson, please take the roll call vote.
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Yes.
Mr. Briggs, Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you. The board rules of procedure will be recommended to the policy's sponsor for revision approval. Next, we will move to 7.3, policy 9260, auditor. The chair recognizes Mrs. Welsh to provide an update to policy 9260, auditor.
So by law, we are required, the school system is required to have an annual audit by an external auditor. And so this really lays out in detail what it is. It's Education Article 5-109 that requires it. And basically, it is an actual financial audit, not a performance audit, but the audit shall be conducted by a certified public accountant or a partnership with certified public accountants who are licensed by a state board of public accountancy and approved by the state superintendent of education. So, and then the audit has to be made in accordance with the standards and regulations adopted by the Maryland State Board of Education. And then the results of the audits, including a letter of recommendation submitted by the auditor, are a matter of public record, so everyone can see that information, and will be reported to the following entities within 3 months after the close of the fiscal year. And so that's the Maryland State Superintendent of Schools, State of Education, the Prince George's County Executive, and the County Council receive a copy of it. The Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee of the General Assembly receives a copy of it. The Senate Budget and Taxation Committee receives a copy. The Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, the House Appropriations Committee, and the House Committee on Ways and Means. So and just so you know, because our office ended up being tasked with making sure that we provided the report from the auditor to all these people. And it's through the Department of Legislative Services. We have to provide out loads and loads of copies that are sent out. And then they send it to all these different people. So everyone gets to see what were the results of that audit on an annual basis. And then the other piece I added is the board may agree. So this is just opening the door if you want to do this, but you're not required to do it. So it says the board may agree to perform a contract for a performance audit of PGCPS as stipulated. And this is the next section of that article, section 5-100. 110 of the education article. And a performance audit is an assessment of the Prince George's County Public Schools practices to determine whether it is operating economically and efficiently and whether corrective actions for improving its performance are appropriate. So that is always something that the board can say. I mean, if they feel like that's a question and they would like to see that, be looked at, then they can always say, we want to move forward with a performance audit, which takes a slightly different twist than your regular financial audit. And so the superintendent then would develop administrative procedures to implement this policy. And that's it. It's a pretty simple one.
Great. Thank you so much. Mr. Briggs?
Yeah, thank you for that presentation. I guess the one question I had was, and I'm looking in the policy to the references that you mentioned, so this might be mentioned in those references, but where in the policy it says, where it would be posted within the time frame, so that as far as accountability goes, when the board is like, where should this be if we're reaching, hearing things from the community or other partners, having something clearly in here.
We could put something in there.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we would do like a link or something to it on your website.
Yeah, and if it's mentioned in the references like that, this is standard protocol, then that's fine. But I just wanted to say it might be good to have it in the policy too, so that we all know when we look.
That it is not, and only because it doesn't say that in that kind of detail in the law. But absolutely, I can add that. That would be, that's great because it is a public record.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Board Member Briggs. That was a great suggestion. Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, terrific. The question is, shall the committee recommend policy 9260 auditor to the policy's sponsor for revision approval? Any discussion? Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss? Mrs. Olivo?
Aye.
Mr. Briggs?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders? And Mr. Jackson? There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Policy 9260 auditor will be recommended to the policy's sponsor for revision approval. We will move on to agenda item 7.4, policy 3186, cost estimates for board resolution rescission. I'd like to recognize Mrs. Welsh to provide an overview of policy 3186, cost estimates for board resolutions rescission.
So the reason we're requesting a rescission on this is because it's being incorporated into the procedures for the board meetings.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any questions from board members? Okay. The question is, shall the committee recommend rescinding policy 3186, cost estimates for board resolutions? Any discussion? Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss? Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you. Policy 3186, cost estimates for board resolution will be recommended for rescission and released for public comment. Moving on to agenda item 7.5, policy 8344.3, opening of meeting with prayer, rescission. The chair recognizes Mrs. Welsh to provide an overview of policy 8344.3, opening of meeting with prayer, rescission.
So again, this particular policy is actually being incorporated into the to the procedures for the board meetings, and therefore it needs to be rescinded because we don't need both.
Thank you. Are there any questions around this? Okay, perfect. The question is, shall the committee recommend rescinding policy 8344.3, opening of the meeting with prayer? Any discussion? Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Policy 8344.3, opening of the meeting with prayer, will be recommended for rescission and released for public comment. Next, moving on to item 7.6, policy 8384, certificates of recognition, rescission. The chair recognizes Mrs. Welsh to provide an overview of policy 8384, certificates of recognition, rescission.
So again, this policy is being incorporated into the rules of procedure. So therefore, we don't need to have it. So that's why it's being rescinded.
Thank you. The question is, shall the committee recommend rescinding policy 8384, certificates of recognition? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Policy 8384, certificates of recognition, will be recommended for rescission and released for public comment. Moving down to agenda item 7.7, policy 9305, proclamations, rescission. The chair recognizes Mrs. Welsh to provide an overview of policy 9305, proclamations, rescission.
This is the last one. It will be, again, it's incorporated into the rules of procedure. So therefore, we don't need to have this policy. So that's why we're requesting rescission.
Thank you. The question is, shall the committee recommend rescinding policy 9305, proclamations? Any discussion? Okay, Ms. Johnson, please take a roll call vote.
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Policy 9305, proclamations, will be recommended for rescission and release for public comment. We don't have any policies for community input, and we don't have any policies for enactments. So we can move to agenda item 10.0, adjournment. I'd like to inform the public that the next oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh,
Did I
I'm
miss
just going to
something?
say that we actually do have two that are moving out for to consent to go out for public comment.
Oh, okay.
it should be, I'm just checking the agenda. It's the two that have to do, it's 8301 and 8302 board policy.
Okay.
Both of those, the one is 8302 student appeals and hearings, which have to do with sections 7305 appeals and hearings, and then the other one is 8301, which has to do with 6202 appeals for certificated staff. So both of those are
Okay.
up to vote on to see if they wanted to put them out for public comment.
Okay, thank you for catching that. And so let's see, let's move to a roll call vote on releasing those two policies for public comment. Ms. Johnson, can you please take the roll?
Dr. Moss, Mrs. Olivo,
Aye.
Mr. Briggs,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye.
Mrs. Jackson Saunders, and Mr. Jackson. There are 3 in the affirmative.
Thank you. So policies 8301 and 8302 will be released to the community for public comment. Thank you, Mrs. Welsh. Now we will move to adjournment. I'd like to inform the public that the next virtual policy and governance committee meeting will take place on June 16th, 2026. Please continue to check the Prince George's County Board of Education website for meeting information and updates. Thank you for a really great discussion this evening, and for everyone who joined us, especially our guests. To our viewers, thank you for watching. There being no further business, the time is now 6:19. The May 12th, 2026 Policy and Governance Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.